Hello everyone. So this week's video is going to be a little different. I decided to make a video about my septum piercing experience because of all the curious questions I've gotten about it. So my decision to get this piercing was borderline spur of the moment. I got it done about a week and a half after the idea popped into my head, and I'm glad I did. It's been about a month now since I got it. It's just a 16 gauge horseshoe with some spikes on the end, titanium. But overall, I would definitely suggest thinking about it for a while before you get any piercing because of how much it changes your daily routines. Do research on the specific piercing before you get it. Your nose is going to hurt for a little while. You're going to have to commit to cleaning it multiple times a day for a couple of weeks. And it can be hard to adjust to having something hanging out of your nose. So just some pre-piercing advice. There's a lot of conflicting information out there about piercings and painkillers. My piercer told me that it would be okay if I took a Motrin after the piercing and I wouldn't have to worry about bleeding, and he was right. Just don't take painkillers before the piercing because they are blood thinners, and that means that your piercing will be a bloodier process. Get a good night's sleep, eat a good meal, and be well hydrated before you get it done. Never get pierced or tattooed when you're drunk or high, and if it's a great parlor, they won't allow it in the first place. If you're nervous, you can have a friend go with you. I went by myself, and it was this awesome sort of secret that I kept for a few weeks. Oh, it's entirely up to you. But anyway, I got a referral from a friend to go to Atomic Tattoos here in Orlando, Florida. I checked it out, it passed my inspection, and I got it done by a guy who'd been piercing for about 10 years, and he had a great portfolio to prove it. He and I spent a lot of time discussing a particular look that I was going for. I'd only wanted a certain amount of the horseshoe to be visible, so because of the shape of my nose, he had to pierce me a little higher up than he would have normally done. He also had to widen the ring a little bit in order for me to be able to flip it up in my nose while I'm at work. Be open with your piercer. I'm not interested in stretching my septum, so I didn't ask about that, but from what I understand, if you let the piercer know that you intend to stretch your septum, they might be able to pierce you with a thicker needle, so asking questions is a good thing. When you're ready, they have you fill out a sheet of paperwork and you show them your driver's license. I asked if I could watch him do the setup process, just so that I'd know that all the materials were sterile and fresh out of the package. He had me sit on a bench for the piercing, though some piercers will prefer that you lie down and lean your head over the side of the table. Then he had me stare at the ceiling, and he looked at my nose and cleaned it with this iodine wipe. Then he marks 2 dots on the inside of your nose and a faint line along the bottom of your septum. The septum is actually pierced through this squishy, fleshy portion of your nose called the sweet spot. They won't typically pierce you through the cartilage unless they have to. So he marks the placement and the clamps go on. And they're basically these forceps that have 2 metal rings on each end, and when pressed together they form this small channel that the needle passes through. He asked me if I was ready and told me to take a deep breath and to exhale as he pushes the needle through. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say the pain was probably about a 4 or a 5. Mine didn't bleed, though he said it's normal for your eyes to get watery or to stream a little bit. He left the needle in my nose while he lubed up the ring and slid it through. That hurt a little bit, but still nothing horrendous. I checked it out to make sure that it was in the right spot and that it hung straight. There are a lot of stories out there about botched septum piercings. Thankfully mine hangs straight, but if yours is crooked, you can just talk to the shop about it. When it heals up, they may offer to re-pierce you for free. The piercing process itself was pretty quick. It probably wouldn't have taken more than 2 minutes had I not asked him to do the setup process in front of me. I paid $50 for my septum piercing, not including a tip. I tipped 20, which seems ridiculous, but I was also getting my tragus pierced in the same visit, so really it was just a 20% tip. I do not recommend getting pierced twice in the same visit unless you're in good health and you know that your body can handle it. I flipped the ring up right away. I've been flipping it a few times a week since I got it. Honestly, I don't recommend flipping it so much because every time you do, you damage the new tissues that are trying to form over the wound. So if you can, just leave it up or down while it heals. It'll shorten the process. Don't get your septum pierced if it's during allergy season. If you know you're going to be constantly blowing your nose, that'll irritate it a lot. Never get a piercing when you're sick or injured, because having an open wound will only put more strain on your immune system, which puts you at higher risk for infection and lengthens the healing process. So double whammy. To hide it, all you have to do is extend your nostrils by pulling down on your upper lip, and you just rotate the jewelry backward until it's sitting where you want it to. Unless you're standing over somebody or unless someone is like sitting underneath you, it's pretty well hidden. If you've cleaned all the crusties off, it shouldn't hurt to move the ring. If you have spikes on your horseshoe though, then it might twinge a little bit when the spikes hit the edge of your nose. Yeah, like that. But still, very minimal pain. And having the ring flipped up can complicate blowing your nose a little bit. I've had to rely on Q-tips sometimes. When you have a septum piercing, you blow your nose in much the same way as you would before. You just try not to pinch your nose a bit. What you have to deal with afterwards, though. As for healing time, there doesn't seem to be a very strong consensus. I've heard anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. Of course, everyone is different. Just know that piercings heal from the outside in. So it may look fine on the outside, but scar tissue is still forming on the inside. For the first few days, my nose was pretty sore. Other times I just feel a bit of a pinch. My nose was really tender to the touch, so if I accidentally bumped it or hit the ring, my eyes would water pretty bad, but the pain goes away after a few seconds and it's not anything serious. You may want to keep painkillers around. You're going to want to be very gentle when you wash your face. You're also going to want to make sure that you keep your facial soap and any makeup or oils away from the piercing. I actually acclimated very quickly to having something hanging out of my nose. Some people take longer than others. There will be this white liquid called lymph that's going to leak and harden around the piercing site, forming the little crusties. It's completely normal. Just do the salt water soaks to soften and remove the crust with Q-tips. Make sure you don't get it caught on your hair or clothes. I've seen a lot of videos where people complain about this, but it's not something I've had trouble with personally. You're going to want to avoid swimming in pools or lakes or other bodies of standing water while it's healing because of all the bacteria that they harbor. Going to the beach, though, is actually good for the piercing because of all the salt water, but just make sure you clean all the sand off. You're going to need to get into the habit of checking to make sure that the balls or the spikes aren't loose. I'm kind of paranoid about accidentally breathing in one of my spikes and getting it stuck in my lungs, so I usually check it every night before bed. As for changing your jewelry, it's best to wait until after the piercing is healed. Though if you can't wait that long, I'd recommend going back to the piercer and letting a professional do it. They can teach you how to lube up the ring and pop it through. One thing, though, I was not prepared for were the looks that other people gave me after I got the piercing. I had gone to get some lab work done the next day, and I think people definitely look at you differently when you have facial jewelry. So just be prepared for that. There's a lot of stuff you have to deal with, so you really need to think about it before you get it. Though something cool about septum piercings is that depending on your body, the hole won't close up if you leave the jewelry out. I've read multiple stories about people who haven't worn their jewelry in 20 years and they can still fit the ring through. As for how to clean it, you clean a new septum piercing about 2 to 3 times a day with salt water soaks. After about a week or two, then you can cut it down to morning and evening soaks. So you put about 1/4 of a teaspoon of un-iodized sea salt in about 8 ounces of water and mix it up good. Make sure you're measuring the correct amount of salt because using too much will make the acidity of the water higher than that of your skin and it throws off the pH balance, which will cause irritation. Always make sure that you're using sterile materials. You always want to wash your cup and your spoon before the mixing process. When you're ready, you just kind of dip your nose in the cup and you hold it there for anywhere from like 30 minutes, or 30 seconds to a minute or so, and then rinse with regular water after you wash your cup out again. Another method is to soak cotton balls or Q-tips in the salt water and just hold them there. I chose the cup method because of how sore my nose was when I touched it or if I applied pressure to the area. You can also use unscented antibacterial soap. You just kind of massage the area around the piercing and rinse it with warm water. Try to use water that's close to room temperature. Water that's too hot or cold will make your eyes water. If you're out on the go, you can use saline solution or H2 Ocean spray, in addition to the regular soaks in the morning and evening. But as for the H2 Ocean spray, honestly, I bought it for the convenience because I didn't feel like mixing my own salt water every day. But both of these are cheap and effective, though I will say that the salt in the H2 Ocean makes it a little bit more beneficial than the saline solution because the sea salt, it actually has healing properties. Don't use rubbing alcohol or peroxide or ointments of any kind on a new piercing. I found this advice funny because it runs contrary to everything that I had been taught about piercing care. But honestly, unless it gets infected, I'd avoid them altogether because they are harsh and they kill the new skin cells that are trying to form over the wound. So that's pretty much it. I might be making another video with some general piercing advice, so that might be worth a look. But if you've got any questions, just leave a comment and I'll get back to you. So thanks for watching and have a good night.